We probably
There
can't.
it goes. There it goes.
So who hit the record? Did you, Dr. Jory? Oh,
I did
thank you,
not.
Ron. Thank you. Okay, so we'll go to number 2, project updates, and that is Mr. Monroe.
Okay, thanks. Good morning. Good morning, everybody. So on the False Bay, if I could just use this project updates to quickly give a 2 or 3 minute update on the major project we had this summer from the minor capital, which was the washroom upgrades at the 2 high schools. So I'll also just touch on that. But before I talk about False Bay, Elaine, you had just asked about the community access to the track. I thought I answered that last month, but essentially the track can be utilized by the public, after hours, and I believe they can still use it during the day, but recognizing it's a school first. So if there's athletics meets or anything like that for the school going on, that gets priority. After hours, if it's needing to be booked, like through Oceanside, like if Oceanside Track want to use it, or if the Bolinas Whalers are using the football field, there's an order of priority for booking the facility, and that is school students first for track meets and those sorts of things. The field in the middle is school students first, school programs first. Outside that, the track, first priority is Oceanside Track Community, and that's booked through the RDN. And the field is first and foremost for the Whalers outside of the school hours. And school programs, that's booked through the RDN, and then the RDN's instructed after those 2 priorities, it's open slather to anyone else that wants to book the facility as a public asset. So that's the order of priority for booking it, and we do run the bookings through the RDN like we do with all our outdoor facilities at the schools. Sorry, I see your hand up there.
Yeah, Elaine has a question.
Well, thanks, Phil. That clarifies it, because our intention was always, if there wasn't somebody using the track, that the community could use the track. And I know I will be using the track during the day if it's not in use. So thank you.
No problems. And Michael from PQB News reached out to me on Friday. I've just got to close the loop with him today, but he's just going to run a piece in the local paper, just sort of, leaning into the fact that community policing and making sure people are doing the right thing on the asset, and then trying to, make everyone aware that we don't want motorized vehicles, scooters, electric bikes, and that sort of thing. So that will come out in the paper, but touch wood, so far so good, and everything's going well there. On the False Bay update, so back in late August, early September, I think it was early September actually, we went over there, a group of us went over to False Bay and had a public consultation. Eve was there, Superintendent Jory, the architectural firm, Studio Hub, they had 3 people there. It was a really interactive and deep dive into the community needs. I thought it was really well facilitated by Studio Hub, and we got a lot of information from the community, and we got some really good feedback from the community. They have since taken all that feedback, and with some of my guidance around, they came back with a design that looked a little clunky, and so we went back and said, can we sharpen that up and sort of do some of these things. They've now got it down to an A and a B option, and I don't want to share that here because I'm going to take that to the senior leadership team and to some of the staff over at False Bay, and just have a look at that and see which options resonate the most. And then I'll bring it back to this group hopefully next month, and we can have a look at a really sort of thorough design that the architects have come up with, which I think is going to satisfy everyone, and most importantly, it's going to meet all the community needs. So I'll come back next month with that. Any questions on the False Bay? Sorry, yeah.
Yeah, I see that Trustee Flynn has her hand up.
And Phil, when will you do the next outreach with the families and parents and things on those designs? November, end of November, December kind of thing, when the weather's going to be the worst to travel. But
yeah, I think so. I think once we get once we've met, I'm looking to meet with our senior leadership colleagues and some of the staff from False Bay here in the next week. And then we'll plug something in for the community end of November.
Okay, great.
Yep.
Thank you. You look like you're ready to say something, Mr. Monroe.
I was just going to say, can I move on to the washroom update?
Yeah.
Please do.
Okay, perfect. I will just share my screen here. So I've spoken about this a little bit in the past, and in the last 2 or 3 weeks, we basically had the projects finished there. We've obviously got some, let me just work why that's not, bear with me.
I actually seen the washroom at Bolinas yesterday, and I'm so impressed. They're beautiful.
Yeah, they're neat, that's for sure. And there's some really good feedback from the community,
kids,
from the kids and from the parents as well. So I'll start with KSS. And so we've obviously got some deficiencies that we're going to work through with the contractor here. That is being worked through as we speak, but they're active and they're being utilized by the students, which is great. And so this is the KSS one. In KSS, we have it's gender specific at this stage, and there are other gender neutral washrooms, but they are just all cubicles. And as you can see, very open sight lines for the common areas, which the teachers appreciate. And then over at Berlin, so you can see top left-hand corner where we're just doing the lead water testing on the bottle filling station. So that's one of the deficiencies we're just working through. And then at Bolinas, this one is a universal washroom, and so it's just open to all genders, and this is being heavily used as well. So both washrooms are being heavily used. Some of the feedback is that if there is vaping happening, which we don't want to happen, it's happening behind closed doors in a cubicle, and it's allowing other kids to go and use the washroom safely, which is great. And we're seeing the washrooms at Bolinas, as an example, lots of grade 8 students that have come to the school, and the ones that probably feel the most intimidated going to the washrooms with kids hanging out in are using these washrooms a lot more heavily than the other washrooms in the school, which was some of the design intent from the student leadership group. So in talking to the 2 principals at the 2 secondary schools, we want to take this feedback now back to the student leadership group and sort of just solidify some of the design recommendations that came from that group, and just talk about how their involvement in creating more citizenship in the school is is appreciated and alive and well. So that's pretty much it.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments from anybody? Trustee Austin.
Thanks for that, Phil. I'm just wondering, is in each cubicle, is there some sort of sensor for smoke? Or I don't even know if they have vapor type sensors, but, and not that would set up a huge alarm or anything that would have to empty the school, but is there, you know, something, some sort of indication if there's smoke or something going on in there?
Not in each cubicle we have exhaust fans taking anything away. As far as vape sensing, there's no smoke. So we have smoke detectors in the washrooms, obviously for fire and that sort of thing, and if someone was smoking a cigarette. But when it comes to vape sensing, it's a little bit more of a different detection device, and we're not convinced that the return on investment for putting those into washrooms, when I chat to other school districts, the return on investment isn't worth it, because they can be gamed by the students. They can vape under their shirt and it doesn't set the detector off. Equally, the vape sensing detectors go off hundreds of times a day, and then they report to an app on the principal's phone, and they have to go and respond to it hundreds of times a day. And so I don't think the technology's there yet. We're watching that space. But in short answer, nothing for vape sensing because we're not sold on the idea yet, but definitely smoke detection as part of the code.
I just wanted to ask, did that answer your question, Jason? Or
Well,
Jason put
no-
a question in the comments. Did you want to
Yeah.
ask it?
Sure. I heard him say that if there was someone vaping in a stall, then it's safe for the other students. But I mean, that secondhand vape and fumes, I don't want to be in the same room as someone vaping myself, let alone someone in the next stall. So unless there's like individual air vents exhausting that vaping smoke, how is that safe for other students?
Yeah, so the vaping detection across all school districts is something that's a work in progress, and it's a challenge for everyone. In the gender specific washrooms in the existing designs, they would be hanging out near the sinks and making it intimidating for other kids to go and use those washrooms. And so in this environment, yeah, they're not hanging out in the common use area. They're in an individual stall, and we don't want that to happen. But there is individual exhaust fans in each one of those cubicles, and so anything that's happening in there is getting taken away. We don't want vaping to happen at all, but at least the kids can go and use a safe environment, and the teachers have good sight lines to see any of the loitering here without having to go in and go into the other washrooms, which makes it more challenging to supervise.
Okay, I'm glad to hear there's individual exhaust fans in each stall. That's great. Thank you.
No problem.
Any further questions? Not seeing any. I want to thank you, Phil, for that presentation again. And once again, welcome back. I'm sure you were very missed.
Yes, thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Okay, moving on, these are items for discussion. Student safety, crossing guards, and this is for Springwood Elementary as well as Oceanside Elementary. And Trustee Austin, I'll let you go first.
Okay, well, this has been both at Springwood and Oceanside has been an ongoing discussion, and nothing seems to ever get resolved. I looked at Google Earth the other day and did a 10-year time frame. You can do sort of a time lapse on Google Earth, and the densification around both those schools, especially Oceanside, has really increased in the last 10 years. And yet there's very few safety mitigation measures. Now, it's not the responsibility, the roads are not the responsibility of the school district. However, the school district, I think, can play a role in terms of lobbying, advocacy, being a squeaky wheel, ensuring that there's a police presence perhaps in the morning, in the afternoon, getting the different government levels involved and talking and going, what can we do to mitigate safety concerns? There's we don't want to wait for a tragedy to happen. I think we could loop Rainey in here on this discussion because this was a topic of discussion at the last Oceanside PAC meeting, and she would also have some further information.
Trustee Young, did you have a question or a comment?
I've got background on this on both schools actually, so maybe we'll let Rainey go first, and then I can kind of give you a bit of a background on both schools.
Rainey, did you want to add to the conversation?
Sure. Yeah, this has been an ongoing issue for Oceanside for like about 10 years now. I think as soon as it became an elementary school, the issue got raised. And we have tried for years and years to try to get some changes, and we keep getting, fingers are being pointed. So we're not really sure how to proceed, and we really could use the support of the district in getting conversations going and trying to figure out what those next steps are. I don't think parents can do it alone, and And yeah, so when we talk to the province, or we talk to the RDN, we're told it's a provincial issue. When we talk to the province, they say, that all the standards are being met, and then then we've been looping in the school district as well, and we're just not really getting any kind of movement on any kind of action to improve the safety around our school. And I know Springwood has had some similar issues with their school as well, and theirs is a bit different. They are part of the municipality of the Parksville, the city of Parksville, whereas we are RDN, and so there's different groups involved, but I think we really need that facilitated conversations to get those changes made.
Yeah, great, thank you. Trustee Young.
Yeah, like I said, I've got background on both schools. So when I first liaised to Springwood, which would have been, I don't know how many years ago, like 11, 12 years. I don't know how long I've been doing this. We had a walking school bus, and that was really great. And then the parent volunteers didn't come for that. And at the same time, the city of Parksville was made aware of the corner of Despard and Molliette, where all of that development happened across from QF, and QF then was a new store as well. There was a child that was hurt in that crosswalk. It's a crosswalk that I use constantly, and I know how difficult that whole area is. It's horrible. So Parksville did a whole transportation study on this, and the staff of Parksville Council, the staff of Parksville at that time, brought forward a fabulous plan for making a safe route to school. It involved, I can't remember all the things it involved. I think there was a flashing light, and there was plans for an overhead walkway and all sorts of stuff. That was derailed by our previous mayor, Maine, and he brought a motion to put in a four-way stop at Despard and Molliette. And the four-way stop, I actually think, as a driver and a cyclist and a walker, four-way stops are just, they're horrible because nobody really knows where to go or what to do. Meanwhile, you've got kids who are walking across that crosswalk, and it's not safe. So at one point we had crossing guards there. Crossing guards cost the school district money that we probably can't afford at this point. And then I was involved in trying through the transportation study to bring that question of Molliette and Despard forward, and there was just no interest in it. We also met with Parksville Council, and we established with them that we all believed that there should be safe routes to school. So that's fine. They were supposed to meet with operations and maintenance and figure something out. We've created parking lots at both of the schools. They do get used at Springwood. They don't get used quite as much at Oceanside. So over to Oceanside, and Angel is the person who really went after this, and I need to acknowledge her work and dedication and like letters and lobbying. Dr. Jory may remember when he first started here, we had a meeting with all of the people who were involved in that Oceanside area, and it just never went anywhere. So Angel applied for grants. They got some stuff to kind of slow the traffic there. It's a problem, and we need to do everything in our power to do something about it. We've spent a ton of money on that parking lot at Oceanside, and I got to tell you, I walk by there all the time, and it is empty, 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 and that drives me nuts. So that's my rant. Thanks very much for listening.
Thank you. Trustee Austin, did you want to add something?
I think others, oh, it is me. Okay. Yes, this has been going on for too long, and we don't want to just continue to talk about it and go, what can we do? And we should be writing our letters to the RDN. We should be writing, of course, and we should be talking to the RCMP especially, I think the RCMP as an immediate response and something that can be done. However, I think we're under some misunderstandings. There are areas in the province, municipalities, and it is their responsibility to pay for crossing guards. Delta, the municipality or the region of Delta, pays for crossing guards for the school district. I think somewhere down around Souk or Saanich. Also, they are paid for by the local government. And that's the kind of thing, we need to be looking at and talking with our the RDN about, and trying to come up with a solution of how can we pay crossing guards. The RDN could be helping supply the courses that crossing guards take actually now to get their certifications to be a crossing guard. Perhaps the RDN could help facilitate supplying those courses and also somehow help in facilitating paying for those services of those crossing guards. But I think we need a plan. We need a short-term plan and we need a long-term plan, and we need to do that right away. And I do think there's a motion in here somewhere to take to the board table. Thanks.
Great, thank you so much. Secretary Treasurer Amos.
Right. So just again, I'm just providing some clarity. When we did get involved in traffic guidance, as it were, we actually hired some flaggers first, and I think then we were able to use some of the staff at Springwood, kind of gave a couple of extra hours to support that. In the end, and again, we were responding to an incident that occurred for, if you can think back in why we got involved in terms of the accident that occurred. In the end, we did it for a couple of months. We did pay for it. We did reach out to the city at that time because they were doing their traffic report to see if they wanted to support and help pay for it. They indicated at the time they were doing that traffic report. And so that was their response in terms of we're doing our work over here. So we did provide some traffic monitoring. Again, I won't say they were crossing guards per se, but we were doing some work. In the end, the RCMP did ask us not to continue it because it was changing the flow of the traffic pattern. They basically indicated that we need to let the traffic take its course, as it were, knowing that four-way stop was coming into play. So we were asked to stand down for the following September. But as we've heard from this conversation, some of these issues continue. But again, that's really just the background in terms of how we responded ourselves. It's not necessarily our direct work. There are, to Trustee Austin's point, there are some districts that are partnered with ICBC, for example, or with other safety organizations to support it. But again, it's not coming necessarily from the funds that the school district provides. It's grants that are being handed over to the school district to supply this this need, as it were. But generally, it's large urban environments where they're indicating the needs are.
Thank you. I don't know if I should chime in right now because you had mentioned ICBC, but I had a report on Springwood and it had a bit of history in it, and Elaine shared a lot of that history. But approximately 5 years ago, during the construction phase of Quality Foods and the nearby condominiums, the intersection of Despard and Moliette experienced increased traffic. There was a parent from Springwood that her son was just about hit by a car recently. I know there was a student that was hit by a car then, and she sent a letter out, and the Springwood PAC forwarded it to me. Out of that letter, I volunteer for the Oceanside Community Safety. I contacted the traffic department. They work in conjunction. I know when you see people out and they're doing traffic watches, so they go out, but they work in conjunction with ICBC, and that's their purpose of being out there. They took this upon themselves. They went to the intersection. They did some observations. In the amount of time that they were there, which was from 1 p.m. to 3:30, there was a total observation of 1,385 cars. Vehicles not coming to a complete stop at the crosswalk was 435 vehicles. They discovered 4 distracted drivers, and then they got positive feedback from either the pedestrians or from people that were driving their cars, a thumb up or whatever. But they're actually going to go further now. They were going to do an upcoming safety awareness campaign there at the corner on October 29th, where they were going to volunteers were, and also the RCMP were with them when they did their volunteer thing. There was an RCMP officer that attended as well. The volunteers will demonstrate proper pedestrian hand signals before crossing. Volunteers will carry safety signage, and then safety reflectors will be handed out to pedestrians. But the PAC had asked me yesterday if they thought this was great, but they asked if they would maybe go to an assembly and do some information for all the kids. So that's a start, but that is, ICBC is a group that can be engaged with. The RCMP are aware now that, yeah, there's some concerns there. And the school is aware that there's some concerns. And when I go to that school, I also experience traffic that is not, they're not patient for the kids. The kids go across this way and then they go across that way. And the vehicles are waiting to turn. And I just feel that kids are spontaneous, they're freewheeling, and they're uncalculated. So their safety can't be put in their hands. We need to, as adults, and the different groups, and I think it's time to go back to Parksville and say, look, this is not working and something else needs to be done. And I agree with Julie. I think we have to mount a campaign. It's going to be an election year. Next year, we could see if we can get some people on board that are willing to really take a look at this after the elections. And I was talking to Brant yesterday, who is our transportation guy, and he had a suggestion that would simplify it somewhat. If the kids, rather than going across and then across again, if they just followed straight down, they cross once, they follow straight down to the school, and then they cross in front of the school, that would conquer some safety stuff in the meantime. So I think these are all just Band-Aids, but I think there needs to be a solution. And when I see the kids, even at Oceanside, waiting for the bus, standing in the ditch, that bothers me. That is not safe for them either. It's not just they need a crossing guard. They need a proper spot to catch the bus, and the bus needs to be there maybe earlier where they're not standing in the ditch waiting for the bus. So I think it is something that we need to all take a look at and maybe, develop a campaign that will get us closer to the finish line, if not to the finish line. So I'm going to carry on. Thanks for my rant, everybody. Mr. Sawchuk.
Yeah, for somebody around the Oceanside area, just being on the road a lot, just want to acknowledge that the RCMP are there on a regular basis. So they do hold speed traps there. So they are putting some efforts in. So just wanted to put that in there. So
Great. Thank you. Franny.
Thank you. So I think crossing guards might be part of the solution, but Oceanside really needs a broader set of solutions, because even with crossing guards, the crosswalk around by our roundabout, it would be going from one safe point to an unsafe point. Like
Yeah.
the other side of that crosswalk, there is no sidewalk. There is a ditch. There are cars parked along those roads. And so we are asking kids to go from one side where it's safe on the school, cross a crosswalk to an unsafe spot where there is nowhere to walk except on the road around vehicles. So I think, you know, it could be part of the solution, but I do think we need much more than that. And you touched on the kids that have to cross the highway to wait for the bus. And right now the bus schedule isn't quite working for our school. So they either have 3 minutes to get to that bus to go to Qualcomm, or they wait 40 minutes on the side of the road on a ditch, and they are elementary school kids. Yeah, I think there's much more to the Oceanside issue. Angel did do an amazing job and got that grant for those radar speed signs, but our only option right now is for volunteers to put them out. And we were not able to attach them to any poles. They can't be permanent. And it's very unrealistic to expect that we can find parent volunteers for every single day that the school is open to come before school and to stay after school to put them out and take them in. And so we're doing our best. And when they're out, they make a big difference. But when they're not out, I mean, even when they're out, we see they're flashing. People are going 50 in a 30 zone and they just keep going. And so we definitely need much more around that. And the response we keep getting back from the province is that we need a safety assessment. And we were told I was at that meeting in 2021 where we met with the province, our MLA, our RDN director, the superintendent. Elaine, you were there as a trustee. There was parents, there was our PAC, there was our school, like everybody was there. And we're told it's about $30,000 to get that assessment done. That's in 2021. I don't know what it would cost now. We still haven't had that assessment. And then once an assessment is done, it still needs to find the funding and get the solutions in place. So, you know, we need action, and we need it now, and before somebody gets hurt.
Great. Trustee Flynn. Oh, your mic's off.
Just hoping that maybe someone can dig in. I've tried to look in my files. Leanne Wallace wrote back as a follow-up to the 2021 meeting. I think it was only in the last year or 7 months or so, with a very long 2 or 3 page rationale of really pointing to everybody else except where either the RDN could do something and whatever, be it, and Remy's explained the province and pointing fingers, but it might be worth sharing with everybody again if someone can find it. I've got the precursor letter to it, but I seem to have lost the actual letter she wrote to us, saying that she couldn't do anything about it, basically.
That's not
Just
good.
just an ask if anyone can look in the archives, and it's only within the last year.
Oh, great. Trustee Austin.
Thanks. Well, I just think just to, you know, to keep the ball rolling, and that I would like to suggest that we have make a recommendation to go to the regular board meeting. It's fairly broad because I'm not quite sure what it would look like, but I want to put something on the board table that will mean action. So maybe something like that the Board of Education work with schools and parents to develop safety plans for Springwood and Oceanside that includes seeking collaboration with local governments and CIBC, et cetera, and that the school district pursues avenues to get a provincial safety, what's it called, a provincial safety review done at Oceanside. Something like that. And basically what I think we need to have some really short term, as somebody referred to them as Band-Aids perhaps, for the short term at those sites, and looking for long-term looking for those solutions. They may not be long-term, there may be short-term, medium-term, long-term, but we really got to nail this down. And I think we really have to work hard to ensure that the school district, the local governments, the provincial government, everybody is working together for the common goal and not trying to push it off onto somebody, that it's somebody else's responsibility. I think the school district can take the lead on this, as yes, it's our responsibility, but we need the help and the work. It's maybe, yeah, just the school district can take the lead on this.
Great.
Thanks.
Thank you. Secretary Treasurer Amos, would you develop a recommendation for us?
Sure,
or
absolutely.
could you
Well,
send in what you said?
Julie,
Trustee Alston?
if Julie can pass on, she can read, like, again, she's got a fully crafted motion there. There's no
Yeah.
point in me. But certainly for the minutes themselves, we can share the nuance. But if she wants to share the motion to me, that I can include in the minutes, but for today, it really just becomes a question of, is the committee supporting her suggestion? And then it'll appear on the board agenda as soon as we can.
Okay.
But yes, generally speaking, Julie can send me her words, her language.
Yeah.
We don't need to necessarily talk about it today if there's general support for what she had to say.
Yeah.
In our motion, and then the motion can be supported today with the language being clarified for the board meeting.
So trustees, do we support this going ahead to the board meeting? Yeah. Please pass that on to Ron, Julie, and we'll move on. Thank you very much. That was great discussion. Okay, Q1 finance summary, and this is you. Oh, no, great.
Photocopier.
Oh, yes, sorry. Photocopier replacement, Leslie.
I know, not super exciting and not super interesting. I don't think it's going to generate a lot of conversation. However, we are noticing that we're having some more issues with our copiers, more frequent issues. Largely that's to do with the age. We're currently sitting with 89% of our fleet is in that 5+ years of age. And in that 89% are our large multifunction devices that are at our schools. So they're primary printer photocopiers. We have a few, what have we got, 11% that are in that healthy 3 to 4 year old range, but those are small printers that are maybe not high volume, used to someone who needs to print checks in a secondary school and things like that, or small office spaces that don't have access to one of the larger machines with any kind of reasonable distance and ease. So looking forward to the next stages, which are going to be looking at which vendors are out there, what can they do for us, and what are some potential short-term solutions. Right now, we own our fleet, so we aren't spending money. We're not paying lease costs or anything like that. However, also in this review, we need to look at which of our devices maybe should we be thinking about leasing because they only have a finite lifespan given the volume of copies that we do. And, you know, as always, looking at how we can trim our overall photocopying
Period.
use. Yeah, but we know that resources have changed, textbooks have changed, things that are available. And so, you know, we also have to work within that, and also finding that balance between that and our technology and access to technology. Yes, we can make everything digital, but that means everyone needs a device all of the time. Is that where we want to be? Is that where we want to go? Is that something that we can support? And so, you know, it's a bit of it's a big thing. The short-term thing is we have some devices that we're going to have to deal with soon. And we also need to think about planning ahead for budget conversations in the spring and what that could look like in terms of replacing. The work that was done prior to me being here was to reduce the number of devices across the system. And that work, I think, has been successful. We've had a tiny bit of creep, and I do mean tiny. We're sitting at 56 units district-wide, And we have some bigger facilities that obviously have quite a few different devices. So looking at is there any room to trim anything there? What makes sense? And going to different vendors and getting some ideas of what leasing could look like for certain parts of our fleet. What does replacement look like where we own our equipment for other parts of our fleet? So yeah, lots to come, but just a preliminary heads up that this is work that is ongoing.
Thank you. Secretary Treasurer Ron Amos.
Yeah, and Leslie certainly mentioned it, but again, really this is about giving the public, the board, the heads up that this is something that we have to work towards. I've made, for those who have had a chance to read the multi-year financial plan that I'll talk to later on in the agenda, there is an area in terms of the long-term strategy in terms of for replacing certain items, whether it's the white fleet, whether it's the copiers, and it's articulated in the report itself. Basically letting folks know that we have to start dealing with what is our plan and how do we get there. Some of these things that we can support if they're one-offs, as Leslie indicated, some of these one-off replacements can happen in the year, but with 56 units coming up, it's a matter of how we manage the replacement and the life cycle of these units as they come due. So again, to her point, more on this later.
Boy, it never rains, it pours. Thank you. President of MATA, Matt.
Well, thank you, Carol. Yeah, I guess I just want to emphasize here, and it's been touched on, but teachers don't have the resources that were available, 10 or 15 years ago. The textbooks, the teaching guides, and so forth. And so a lot of them rely on internet and teachers with support teachers and those sort of sites, which often requires printing out documents so that they can be worked with students and so forth. So I am looking forward to a solution that gets us away from photocopying, but until, as Leslie pointed out, every individual in the classrooms can have a gadget to work with that's functioning. Mind you, it's not just about the gadgets in the room, they have to also be functioning. I think we're a long ways away, and a lot of stress. If you have not been in a photocopier room, when someone gets a jam or something breaks it down for 20 minutes, it's already stressful enough in the school environment, and that just creates a lot of unnecessary stress. So I'm glad that we'll be looking at this and we're looking at the solution to move forward. But photocopying is currently the practice. To shortchange by not getting enough copiers or not getting the right copier, ones that you can print from your computer, from your phone, those sorts of pieces of the copier that can function. That's important. That's important that piece of equipment is functioning and working well. So although I agree with Ms. Rowan that we can look for some other solutions, please, on behalf of teachers, do not shortchange them on this particular piece of equipment. It is the current practice. It needs to be functioning. Yeah, I'll leave it there. I think I've said enough to make my point. Thanks.
Thank you. Trustee Austin.
Thanks, Leslie, for the heads up on that. It might be useful information as we move into budget time. Yeah. If it's something that can be compiled and wouldn't be too onerous, would be to have that information of what has our photocopying usage done over the last, say, 5 years or 10 years. How many people actually get a digital copy perhaps of a textbook or something, but then go ahead and print it. basically I'm wondering, are our photocopying needs, are they going up? Are they going down? And if they're going down, why is that? Is that because families are taking upon themselves to print things at home, or teachers, or whoever it may be? It would just be really interesting information, because I know oftentimes we think, oh, well, it's all digital now. But if you're somebody like me or other people, you like that paper copy, especially something like a textbook or something that you could, maybe make a few notes on. Um, anyway, it would be good data, I think, to have as we move into budget.
Great. Thank you. Leslie, did you have a last comment that you wanted to make?
Yeah, I just want to circle back on a couple things that have been mentioned. So yeah, we can definitely, as Julie just mentioned, we can look at volume, and I do have volume information in front of me actually, on what we're doing, but not necessarily broken down by time. But given, I can go back and pull what was used to generate which copiers should go where, when they did the refresh of the fleet 5.5 years ago, and the previous to that when they were planning. So we can compare sort of then to now, what would our average monthly use look like? I do know that, the textbook piece has become less of a thing in schools. There's a lot of the resources that are not delivered that way. We've had conversations about consumables in schools, workbooks, things like that you can write in. So that's also part of the overall picture. And to Matt's point, there's no attempt to reduce what we're doing. When I say, looking at the fleet, it is actually, what do we do to ensure that when a copier goes through its natural cycle, it's like your car. Your car will go for so long and you won't need anything. You give it an oil change once a year, twice a year, whatever, depending on your mileage. You do those sorts of things. You change its toner, you change its stapler cartridge, and it carries on doing its job. But they do have parts that wear and parts that break down. And unfortunately, a couple of our schools have hit that crunch point, and there's been some communication issues with our current support folks because they've had a change in staff. And so we're working through a variety of different issues that are contributing to this, but there is no attempt to, downgrade what we have access to limit what we have access to, but how do we do it in the best way that actually is the most cost effective and supportive of schools, but also with the understanding that copiers are not, actually the photocopy guy said to me, they do two things. They print and make copies, job number one, and they do have wear and tear and they break down and have to be fixed. And so that would be that's one of the reasons that we actually have to look at replacing some of the fleet, is because they get to a certain age point, and generally it's that 5 to 6 years in the photocopy world where parts become more difficult to get. So yes, we own our copiers. Yes, we can do a bunch of part replacement, but we do run out of that. And they also, some of them have been doing very high volume and are actually tired. They're very tired. It's like the 5-year-old car that's got 250,000 kilometers on it because you're never off the road. Same idea. And so just looking at the fleet from that perspective of which ones are our tired old cars, which ones are the ones that just need a service because they don't have a lot of miles on them. And it doesn't need to be a wholesale replacement, but making sure that schools have what they need, and that we can survive when they're waiting for parts. How do we make sure that we still have access to the tools that teachers need and school staff need to be able to provide our service to our kids?
Great, thank you. Look forward to some information to help us when we are trying to struggle with the budget and decide what's going where. So thank you very much for that. Seeing no further questions or comments, we're going to move on to Ryan Hung, Assistant Secretary Treasurer, for his report.
Yes, so I am presenting the Q1 financial summary for the district. So I believe the report is in your package. So just a reminder that when looking at Q1, we're looking at 1 month of the educational year and 3 months of the fiscal year. So you're basically looking for a percentage of around 10% of your educational costs and 25% of your fiscal costs. So just looking at the first page where we summarize by object here, we look at our revenues and they're consistent year over year at this point in time. Just a few items that I wanted to point out here. For miscellaneous revenue, we're seeing a bit higher percentage of our revenue come in Q1 versus last year. And part of this has to do with in our miscellaneous revenue, we have transportation and childcare revenues going through there. And in terms of our childcare revenues in particular, we have a couple of additional programs, particularly the Oceanside after school care, the second program for after school care there. So there's additional revenues there. And just the timing of transportation revenue is up a little bit as well. With rentals and leases, you can see that it's at 107.5% of our budget. A reminder there that with our rental and lease income that we invoice the tenants at the beginning of the year. And so we recognize our revenues at the beginning of the year as a receivable and we collect throughout the year. So that's why we're seeing the percentage high at this point in time. In terms of investment income, as we all know that interest rates are down, the budget has been adjusted for that if you look year over year. We are in the process of looking at other avenues for investing our funds to generate higher income through a third-party investment manager. So more on that in the future. So moving down to our expenditures with salaries and benefits, things are trending nicely here. The other professionals line is got a slight increase there, and that's because of the child youth clinical officer that we've got in place now from the beginning of the year versus last year where we didn't see the individual until about halfway through the year. Moving down a bit further into supplies and services, things are trending nicely there as well. The dues and fees, you'll see that that's high, but a reminder that the BCSTA dues all happen in Q1. And so that'll balance out by the end of the year. So that is by object. So let's move on to the next page. And we're just reclassifying our expenditures here by program. Again, things are looking pretty stable, trending nicely. The early learning and childcare area, because of the additional programming that we have additional costs there. With the Indigenous Ed area, there is extra spending there because, as you recall from our year end of 24-25, there was a carry forward balance in this area, and they are just spending down that carry forward a little bit earlier this year. District administration is down slightly year over year at this stage in time. We're seeing savings in utilities as well. And moving down to special purpose funds, everything is looking similar to last year at this point in time. So that's my report.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments? Seeing none, we will move on in our agenda. And I've just misplaced my agenda. So enrollment report. Assistant Superintendent Wilson.
Hello, everyone. So you'll see the report on page 3. This is based on the head count. I did talk at the board meeting, the difference between full-time equivalency and head count. So this is based on our head count. And if we look at our projections, you'll see that our secondary came in under projected by 10. Then at the elementary level, you'll see that we've got an increase of 1, and it's a bit misleading because, and where I hesitated is that we need to find a way of representing False Bay, because now we've grown as a school, and where False Bay School used to be K-9, it is now K-12. So when we see a decrease in our secondary, it's because we actually picked up at False Bay, and False Bay is recorded in the elementary section. And so the 30 kiddos that are in elementary under False Bay, 7 of them are actually part of the 10 through 12 program. And so we need to figure out a different way of doing that for next year. But for this year, to keep it consistent in terms of what we've done in prior years, you'll see False Bay recognized as a school under elementary. We need to move it up onto the secondary part because it is similar to our KEEP program, or even our past program, but it's got a variety of ages of students in there. Bottom line is that you'll see that our school-based total difference for our projected is 9 students. I think that's really good predictions in terms of our projections for Secretary Treasurer and I to have done and how we've staffed our schools. I think we've done a really good job in looking at what our projections are and staffed accordingly. Of note, this year was probably the first year that we didn't approve all of the cross boundaries that we have been able to do in prior years, and that's just because of the way that our schools have been set up. And that's why you might see some anomalies between Qualicum Beach not reaching the projections and Bowser being up a little bit. Actually, they were down a little bit, but we didn't approve all cross boundaries, and it was just one of those situations where we didn't have the opportunity to do that because of the sizes of our schools and our classrooms that they were. I don't know whether there's any questions.
Don't see any. So, oh, I do see a couple now. Trustee Flynn.
So the age-old $1 million question, does that lift us out or keep us in funding protection?
I'm going to speak, and then I'm sure Secretary Treasurer will have something to say. As we talked at the board meeting, we are just in funding protection, and our funding protection is calculated based on our full-time equivalency. I believe we will be just out, but that doesn't equal new monies to us because we were already given the grants in terms of the protection for us. So we don't want to get excited that we've got new monies coming to us. But I do believe that based on the FTE that we submitted on our 1701s, that we will just be out of funding protection.
Great. Thank you very much. And I see no further hands. So thank you, Jillian, for that report.
Sorry.
Oh, actually, there are a couple hands. Secretary Treasurer Amos.
I will weigh in. Yeah, I will weigh in. To Jillian's point, it's hard to say, and this is why I'm always cautionary at this time. I was looking at the calendar. We only 10 days ago sent in our enrollment report for the 1701s, and it goes through the ministry now. We haven't signed off the finalized report, but generally speaking, the draft that we send the week after September 30th is what we will be funded for. So I'm confident that, to Jill's point, that we are seeing additional FTE, and the FTE is what's generating the funding. Likewise, she spoke to it, I think, at a previous meeting that the special needs kids, as they're funded by level 1, 2, and 3, we also saw additional kids in that. In both of those cases, they will generate additional funding for the district. But again, recognizing that we've received some of the funding already through these funding protection grants. And effectively, as we've said, we've got to pay off those grants before we see money. I think, to her point, that we will see additional money. We just don't know. There's still a couple of other elements to the generation of the operating grants that oftentimes we don't know until till December when we send in our salary differential numbers, and this is the numbers that generate additional funding dependent on whether our teacher salaries are above or below the provincial average. But effectively, that is the only other missing piece at this point. But again, you don't know how some of these funds, how they're generating against what we owe via these funding protections, and then these other sort of smaller ticket grants. But I think we're optimistic that we are out of funding protection. The question is, are there going to be additional funds released to the district? And we may not know that until closer to the December recalc.
I just have a question. I think it's directed to you, Ron, from Jason. General question, possibly for Ron, when it fits into the agenda. A parent asked at DPAC if school site acquisition charges are being utilized with the new construction in our communities. If not, especially as boundary changes are being considered. Is that something you'd like to answer now, or?
Well, I'll just, it's definitely a longer question. We touched on it 2 years ago when the board asked the same question in terms of the site acquisition charges. It's an element where you get developers to pay to the municipalities some component in order to develop an area. Some of that money goes to school districts, and you apply through it. There's a cycle. There's a way of doing it. Generally, districts with rapid growth will apply for it. Will work on it. We are not ones that, and because of that, there's thresholds to when the developer will actually pay, and so the short answer is, if there's an avenue to support it, we will look into it. But it's not something a slow-growing district like us would necessarily tap into. But again, we are monitoring the need. We are monitoring what we have to do it. We have done it in the past when we were paying for some of the middle schools. Yeah, back in the 2000s kind of thing, the 1990s, the school district received some funds. Most of those funds are sitting in our land capital on our financial statements now. And so we do have some funds that are already generated from it. But to redo it or to apply again, it is an arduous process. It's like a 6 to 10 month process. But point being, if there's an avenue to do it, we'll look into it.
Great. Thank you very much. Matt.
Oh, just a quick question regarding Springwood. I know it was budgeted to be over, which is never a great thing. So now we know it's over. It's one of the only school, I believe, that is over capacity. What is the plan then? I know boundary changes need to probably start having that discussion now, but it would seem to me as the only school in Parksville, the biggest population in our area. So I would hope that there would be an opportunity to look at those numbers and possibly significantly decrease that capacity so that we're not operating a school that's over capacity. If you've ever been in a school that's over capacity, it's exceptionally crowded. So just curious what the plan is there.
And if I can add through the chair, that's.
Yes.
Great question, Madam President. And I think one of the things that we're talking about is we know that capacity is based on what they were at the middle school when they had those specialized areas. And we know we've got room within the context of the current Springwood Elementary School to look at some of those specialized areas. But I think that's why you've heard us have a conversation around what do some of the boundary changes look like and what is that condensed version of Parksville. And whether we need to look at those boundary changes. And I think our superintendent has had that conversation preliminary at the board to put heads up that this is something we are going to be looking at.
Thank you. Trustee Young.
Just to summarize what I think I've heard from Secretary Treasurer Amos, if we don't know until December-ish what the impact of all of this is going to be, it'll come out on the Q2 financial summary, right? So that's where we can track what the impact has been.
Usually it's dealt with in the amended budget, right?
Okay.
It's the amended budget process, but certainly we'll be sharing out with the board specifically in terms of what we know as of December, what we know going into the amended budget cycle. That's not to say that behind the scenes, we may ask the board to act on some other things based on what we might know as a projected revenue source. But in the meantime, generally you don't deal with this every month. You deal with it for our district. The way we've done it is twice a year we amend our budget with the new information and build into it some of the responses that we've set in motion in November, December, January.
Good, thank you. I just want to know that we're keeping track of it is all. Thanks.
Thank you. Dr. Jory.
Yeah, I've covered our intention to do another review of capacity and boundaries in I think 2 previous meetings. So I won't go over that information again. But I do want to just reiterate that the projections that we have currently show a flattening of enrollment across the school district. And actually that includes Springwood. And so we saw it peaking in this year and next year and then flattening after that. The concern that we have is not that we need to act to mitigate against the current capacity and it being, at or above, but to reflect any anticipated growth or unanticipated growth, I guess, that comes out of the construction. Because, Beauregard doesn't know that there's a big condo being built, and we can see that when we drive by it, and we just want to be mindful of that. We know also that we have declining enrollment expected in a number of schools across the district, and so we have capacity there if we rejig our lines. And what we found last time was the balance. There was a rebalancing that happened quite quickly. More quickly than we'd even hoped. So it is a possibility that there will be some changes, but we need to suss out that information. We need to present it to the board, and we need for the board to make a decision on that. And that will all happen within the next 3 or 4 months. Hang in there, everyone.
Great. Thank you very much. Future topics? Oh, no. Financial plan.
Yes. Right answer.
There's actually a question from Ronnie in chat, and I think this gets to what I was talking about. Don't jump the gun on extra resources in the classroom, but I'll let somebody smarter than me answer the question.
It sounds like, this is from Rennie, it sounds like this is good news that enrollment is higher than first anticipated. What does this mean for the classroom? Will more EAs be hired?
I can jump in there if you like, Chair.
Sure.
I think the enrollment is actually a little bit less than we projected by 10 students if you look at the numbers there. So we've come in as our projected amount, which but the FTE, and remember we talked last time that the full-time equivalency is how we are funded. So we have students that might take more courses than anticipated, which generates more funding, and that's what causes us to be able to get the extra funding in there. We also have more students that are in the different categories that have either been students that have already been in our district and had supports in place, but we've been waiting for the paperwork or the designations through the doctor's reports and all those kind of things that we need to do to meet our audit standards to make sure we are in alignment with ministry requirements for designations of students. So supports are already in there. We've worked as a community and as a district that's not waited for that designation. We've always provided supports when kiddos have needed supports. And so some of the children that are in the categories that are increased have already been in our system and are receiving some support. So it's not necessary that we would gain more or get more learning support time or educational assistant time based on what information that we've already known, but we formalized it through the referral process for designations. And going back to what Secretary Treasurer Mr. Amos said, is that we don't want to, count our chickens before they hatch. We want to make sure that we do have the monies coming in, and then through the amended budget process, we'll look to see where our needs are in our system, across our system, and that's where we'll have those conversations to see where, if we have any extra dollars, the most needs are.
Great,
I'm not sure
thank
if that
you.
answers. Okay, thanks.
Yeah. Jason.
Hi, sorry, I would have put this in the chat, but I keep getting disconnected and I'm not a participant there anymore. Anyways, there was mention of a Berger report that came up in DPAC conversation. What is the most recent Berger report that we have, firstly, and do we know how old that is?
I'll put some input. Not to take away from the conversation, but we will have these conversations when it comes to, as Superintendent Jory indicated, we will talk about the planning process. This is kind of a segue into the multi-year planning report that's coming up, but absolutely there will be continued conversation on where we perceive the growth areas are, i.e. Springwood, and what we can do to basically monitor the catchments. Are we covering the right catchments? How can we move kids? We've got the cross-boundary process. We're not expecting any new schools anytime soon. So we're basically dealing with the schools that we've got. The district always, or the ministry always expects the local districts to manage enrollment disparities, I'll call it, because oftentimes the growth isn't in the area that you want them. And so you have at your disposal catchments. You have at your disposal, obviously, bus routes if you want to move kids, and not that I'm suggesting we go down that route, but we do have some local abilities to monitor, or not just to monitor where the numbers are, but where we have capacity to receive the kids. So with the help of Berger, which annually updates their information with what we send them by our 1701s, we can look at the demographics and map out where the kids are so that we can kind of get a sense of where over the course of another couple of years, where those kids are going to show up. But that work will, as Superintendent Jory indicated, will come out in the next couple of months as we share out that that conversation with the public in terms of what we're looking at in managing those areas.
Great.
May I just piggyback on that a little bit?
Actually, yeah, I was gonna let you in there.
Yeah, and I think when we talk about the Berger report, we may be creating a bit of a misconception in that it's not a document that they give us annually like other reports we get. It's more of an interface. So what'll happen is we will send them our most current numbers, and we do this every year. Any kind of idiosyncrasies or other information that might be germane to their calculations, and then they update this program and we use it to create reports. And so we talk about it like it's a report, like it comes out. That's not it. It's fluid. It's we work with it to produce documents. And what we'll do is after we send in the latest numbers that we have, we will do this again in the coming weeks and generate reports that we will bring forward to the public forum. Hopefully that helps a little bit.
Okay, it was just suggested that maybe we were working with an outdated one, but as I understand it, it's an interface that you check with and it's continually updated. Would that be a better way of putting it?
A better way of putting it, yeah.
Okay. Thank you for
Thank you, Jason. I'm going to take Trustee Young's question. I'm going to time in and then we're going to move on.
Yeah, just to point out, as you follow us through the budgeting process, we don't just use Berger. It's a combination of a whole bunch of factors that we put together. So as we get into the budget, you'll see how the different factors come together and how carefully we do this work.
Great, thank you. I just wanted to chime in for Rennie's question because We did talk to Minister Bear about diverse learners, and EAs or additional staff is all about funding. And just to let you know that she said that the extra EAs that were promised through the campaign are still on the table. So that came from Minister Bear when we had our conversation about diverse learners, but that's a funding thing. So when the government comes through with more money, if I think our district does a great job of trying to provide support to the kids that we've got, and like Jillian Wilson said, even if they haven't been fully diagnosed, they are supported. But I just wanted to share that with you because I know that when Trustee Flynn shared our discussion with the minister, she didn't mention that part. And I think that's an important thing for families to know, that that particular part is still on the table. What that means, I don't know at the end of the day. Anyways, thank you very much. And we're going to move on. Secretary Treasurer Amos.
Great. So I've got 5 minutes at all, and then we can wrap up.
Yes.
So I'm just going to share my screen. Again, this is the multi-year financial plan. And I just want to, I hope individuals read it, because it is, not only is it a chance for seniors leaders to sort of assess as we're considering how we ended the year, as we generate our new numbers with the 1701, as we create some internal dialogue in terms of the next few years, again, recognizing that we're always in a perpetual cycle of planning. Not only are we dealing with the current year, but we're also dealing with this multi-year approach. And the multi-year financial plan is all about transparency in terms of, are we thinking about what the future will bring to this district? And this is a way of the public recognizing that, they're on that, but maybe what about this? And so it really is a generative dialogue of letting you folks, the public, know of what we're thinking in terms of the future of the school district as we see things happening around us, and hopefully matching the resources that we've got against the strategic plan that was established with the board and the superintendent. So sharing the screen, I just want to sort of highlight a few things that have kind of have come up in today's conversation, of which
page 13 is really important.
Yeah.
Well, I'm actually starting with page 17. One thing.
Oh, okay.
I was just looking at what 13 was. Yeah, 13 talks about the cycle of planning. Absolutely. And so this is just the details that you'll hear the narrative in terms of the budget planning. So you'll hear some of this narrative in the budget planning, what we do to engage the public, the basic summary of the grants, operating, special purpose, and capital funds that we have access to. And then it starts with the news cycle of information. And so starting off with the enrollment, you can see it's based on, so the 25-26 data, if you've read the report, or when you read the report, you'll note that the 25-26 information is all predicated on the 25-26 budget. So what we knew effectively going into our conversations last spring, and finalizing the annual budget by the end of June. So these numbers are just in the 25-26 column are just that. And so we were anticipating, as we've talked about, a decline in our enrollment between 24 and 25, so that this September 26, as we've just talked about, is very close to what the budget proposed. So where we suggested we were going to be at 2358, we came in at 2348, a net decline of 10. So no big surprises. It actually is a good reflection of how we were able to recognize the downturn and dealing with it in terms of our budget process. But what you're also seeing is, and we'll get an update from Beauregard from their perspective, as well as our own internal narrative and our own local knowledge of what we foresee 26-27 and 27-28 are going to look like. And we do know internally that we've got a large graduating class in grade 12 this year. And we've got a smaller one in grade 11, which will transpire into a graduating class of 2028. And those numbers are not being covered off by the incoming kindergarten. And so we've right now, as we've talked about for the past couple of years, that's the narrative, is that our graduating class far exceeds our incoming kindergarten. And so that's what's creating this declining enrollment. So that's the narrative, is our enrollment is going to continue to decline. It just really how it will manifest in terms of our planning processes. So that's the one thing that, again, all of this is tying into today's conversation, just to wrap up, that we are looking forward in our planning on a 3-year cycle. The next page, the next 4 pages are just multi-year estimates. And again, what you'll see in the assumption page is that we don't know if the per pupil increase, if there's going to be a per pupil, and that's the funding that we get per FTE of student counts. We don't know if it's going to increase for next year. We will find that out in March. So in the meantime, these estimates are based on a certain set of assumptions. One of them is that we don't know the increase in per pupil, so all we can assume is that our revenue is going to decline because our per pupil is going to decline, as shown on the previous sheet. And so it really is us now matching our revenues with our expenditures. And so there's a certain logic to all of that that says some things are tied directly to the per pupils in terms of the revenues, and therefore we have to match our expenditures going forward. And so there is going to be a drawdown in certain aspects. We will continue to find efficiencies. We will continue to work on efficiencies in terms of controlling utility costs, in terms of getting support for a broader replacement cost strategy. Generally speaking, we don't have any control over that escalating benefit costs, and so you'll see those assumptions presented in these narratives. But effectively, there's a lockstep to this so that we can all kind of get an understanding of where we're going with this, so that we will need to reduce our expenditures over the course of time. And then and sorry if I'm dragging this down. I'm not expecting you to follow what I'm doing, but do note this is obviously included in the agenda. But I will draw your attention to the final page of this, which basically brings in the revenues over the course of time, the expected salaries. Again, we're rolling these up into one panel. That basically is recognizing that to balance the budget, which is what we did this year, we had to do some things. And so again, 25-26 is predicated on what we did in the annual budget. We will now amend it based on given and new revenue information. Some revenues we will see as an increase. Some revenues we may have to adjust conservatively in the event of additional investment revenues, kind of thing, interest rates in that nature. So we will adjust our revenues accordingly. And then as we gain confidence, we may or may not be able to add value to the expenditures going forward. But point being, that will all be dealt with in the amended budget planning process. But given what we know to date, we know that we've got a balanced budget for 25-26. In our given strategy, we don't want to rely on our surplus. We've got a policy that says 1% or between 1 to 2% is good, 2% plus is better of our operating expenditure. Right now, we're sitting right at the 1% for our surplus. So we are right at the low point of it, as we've shared at the last public meeting in September when we passed the budget, when we passed the financial statements. So it's not exactly where we want to be. So what we want to do is build that surplus up with time. And it's going to take time because we know that our revenues are not going to be increasing at any given rate. So this is really just being mindful that if we can add to it at the end of the year, we're doing ourselves a favor, because it's not something we want to keep drawing down every time we have a financial issue. So that's, again, just the narrative in terms of what this is meaning as we think about our 26-27 budget planning also. The other thing I just want to draw your attention to, and again, this is the local capital, and again, why Leslie was here today in terms of advocating for the copier replacement is those replacements, if you've heard my spiel over the last few years, they're not covered off. They're not funded in any other way. So we have to find local dollars. And two ways of doing that are finding it within your operating grants, and you move money from operating surpluses into the local capital to pay for these things, or you do it through funding of land and land sales. And so given that we haven't had a lot of land sales since 2015, I think, 2016, then we're having to find a ways within our operating grant. So, but what we do know that we have to plan for are some of these things. And so again, we talk about the White Fleet replacement, if we can come back to that for the budget planning. If we can look at the copier replacement, and again, we'll give you some better information as we get closer to the budget planning. And IT tech refresh, and again, this is just generally trying to give the IT department some funding for additional hardware or software, as it were, over the course of time, recognizing that it's in a perfect world, you would spend the same amount each year, but we know there's ebbs and flows to the demand that the IT department has. And so really this is just creating that conversation of how do we deal with it? Well, you deal with it by pointing to it and letting everybody know that there's a hole that needs to be filled, and then addressing it through the conversation, whether it's done through budgeting, whether it's done through financial statement preparations in terms of when and if a surplus is there at the end of the year, then you can make that decision and give it to the board to move money from operating surpluses into local capital. But again, it's recognizing that this is this planning process that we are continuing to undertake to recognize some of the pressures that we have and how we can, the sooner we get out in front of it, obviously, the better we can plan for it in detail. That's it. I'm going to stop sharing and we'll open it up.
Yeah, we've got 4 questions and we've got just a few minutes left in this meeting. So Trustee Young.
Yeah, so I know this is going to go to the board because that's the recommendation and I do support that. I just want to underline what Mr. Amos said. This document is a document that I print and I refer to all the time. And some of you here know that I do that and are probably pretty sick of me doing it. But for anybody who's kind of new to this is a document to really read and understand, because this is the basis of how we do our work, not only with our strategic plan, but how our strategic plan then comes together with our budgeting process. I'll say more at the board meeting.
Thank you. Trustee Flynn.
Yeah, I was just wondering, Ron, why we don't record False Bay and the construction of False Bay and things like that, whereas we've got recorded here the capital on childcare at Qualicum. Is it just because it's a straight flow through and money will come in, money go out, but I mean, that's a 2 to 3 year project now for us.
And you're wondering why it's not in the multi-year planning?
Well, or referred to as being, we've got the other capital and provincial capital reserves and things. Should it land somewhere in the commentary that it's, or if not, we don't need to bring up something. But
I hear your point.
Yes.
And just to respond, we can put anything we want in this. It really comes down to when this came out, there was certain things that you could do. Like there's some multi-year planning reports if you do want to do the research. There's some that are about 80 pages long in some districts, and they truly do delve into the details. I kind of see the capital planning as not necessarily, and again, I could be wrong, not necessarily when we know that we've got the planning process, when we know it's a 3-year, it's ongoing, it will come and go, and we're doing it. Could it be included in this? Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, and so it's really, there's no right answer in terms of should it be or could it be. I didn't want to go dwell into that because some of that stuff is actually in our financial statement analysis and discussion also. So you don't want to repeat the recreate or not recreate. You don't want to necessarily repeat it. You want some of these things to stand on their own in terms of the basic understanding of what is the purpose of this report. And in my mind, the purpose of this report is mostly centered around operating. And generically around some of the things that operating funds touch, which is the local capital. But that's not to say that some districts don't touch on their capital planning cycle, but we do have those conversations in other areas.
Yeah. Okay, fair enough. Yep.
Great. I just want, before I go to you, Matt, Rani has just made a comment in the chat. It says, there are some unknown factors that could impact the plan. The referendum regarding the RDN purchase of French Creek School, the closing of Craig Street Commons and the possible sale, and the future agreement with the town of Qualicum regarding Qualicum Commons. Is the plan based on no more rental income from these sites? Does it include security and maintenance costs for these sites? Discussion agreements are made, as discussion agreements are made, will there be a plan to update to reflect these changes?
Wow. How do I answer that in minus 3 minutes? So more on this later, absolutely. Certainly the budget planning too. A couple of the questions I heard, there's some things that are out of our hands. French Creek and what comes of that. We all know it's a public, it's a public out there. What will be, will be. And we'll know more of that once the polls close next weekend. And it could impact how we look at our local capital, for example. But we're not depending on it by any means. We have to move with the information that we've got control over. Second to that, what we were of what we were able to control are these rental sites. And so absolutely we made, as we've talked about for the last 2-3 years, the facilities needed to be dealt with at the board table. And so we made the decision to close, the board made the decision to close those. And at length, we've had that discussion in terms of the impact that it would have on the budget, i.e. the revenues, but likewise the corresponding expenses. So that was dealt with in the budget process, and therefore, by extension, is being dealt with in this multi-year plan. Closing of the Craig Street Commons, possible sale, future of. I guess the short answer is all of these things we know about. All of these things are part of our planning processes. Some of it is still behind the scenes because we don't know the outcomes yet, but recognize that we are following these in terms of our discussions internally. And whether or not they actually make it to a multi-year financial plan is another story with it embedded in the narrative, but definitely we continue to monitor these things as we've shared in the past.
Great. Thank you so much. Matt.
I guess just under concern of time, are we coming back to this at another meeting where we can ask more specific questions, or is the time now to do that, knowing that we're 5 minutes over? What's the direction you'd like to give me, Chair Kellogg?
I would like you to go ahead with your question.
Okay.
This is coming to the regular board meeting, and I'm anticipating it will be a longer discussion there.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm just curious, on page 14, we talk about high incidence. Those numbers that they actually don't reflect, they're high numbers, but they actually don't reflect any funding. Is that an assessment, a correct assessment of that line item?
That is correct. So yes,
okay.
we get, so yeah, level 1, 2, and 3 come with funding FTE. High incidence, while we report it to the ministry, doesn't come with additional funding. And so I'm showing
Okay.
it, so I put it on there just for a notation more than anything.
That
I
answer your
noticed that.
question?
Yeah, that answers. I have a couple questions though.
Oh.
The second question was, is the continuing education, I noticed we had a bit of it, you know, and now we don't have it anymore. Is that based on the changes to distant ed? Is that why that's at a 0 mark off?
I would say yes.
Yes. Okay. I'm just and then I'm just not sure if there's people on this call that on page 16, when you talk about teachers and principals and vice principals, educational assistants, support staff, and really other professionals, who's included in those two latter categories? Like on page 16 at the bottom.
Page
16, yeah.
Page 20.
Oh no, I have page 16
Oh,
on
16
my
of the,
document.
sorry, 16 of the
Of the
report,
report.
20 of the agenda. Gotcha. Okay.
Oh yeah, sorry, yeah.
Yeah, no worries. And again, I answered the, and don't misunderstand this, but I did answer this at the public meeting because there was when we were doing the financials, and I pointed to some of the areas that people can ask about. But teachers are teachers, principals are principals. Education assistants and support staff are CUPE staff. EAs speaks for itself. Support staff speaks to all other CUPE members. So those are the clerical, those are the bus drivers, those are the trades, those are the grounds, those are the custodians. Other professionals are exempt positions, so they are managers, senior managers, myself, superintendent, associate superintendents, as well as supervisory and management staff that we have at the board office and our operations department.
So then learning support teachers fall under teachers.
Correct.
Okay.
Teachers truly are the MATA professional group.
Okay. Thank you.
That answer it, Matt?
Yep. Thank you.
Okay, seeing no further questions, our next meeting is going to be Tuesday, November 18th at 10:30 via video conferencing. I want to thank everybody that attended the meeting today and go eat your lunch. We'll adjourn.
Policy at 1.
Policy at 1.